Hey, what's going on? This is August Crenshaw, personal development coach, coming back in to give you some more inspiration, motivation, some tidbits, nuggets to put on your mind to make sure that you got your head in the game so you're not caught up by the distractions of day-to-day life so that you can pursue your entrepreneur endeavors so you can make your dream come true. Considering that's what I do, how about we talk about what your dream is. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because of personal experience. Most entrepreneurs are creatives. Whether you're creating code, creating stories, or creating coaching programs, you are a creative. And that's the bottom line. And most of us are multifaceted. There are several things that we can do. And one of the most difficult things is to narrow down that one thing that we're going to go in hard on and let the rest of the other stuff catch up later. And sometimes you could just be like, okay, well, I like to do this, I like to do that. And depending on what day of the week I catch you on, you like to do one thing more than the other. And I want to talk to you about making sure you're pursuing your primary passion and not just doing something because it's a gift or an ability that you possess, because that doesn't mean that that's what you were made to do. And I want to illustrate this by telling my own story, because I started going down the wrong path of entrepreneurship, but it still worked out for my good. So you're going to learn some things about breaking away, even when you've invested a lot of money. When do you know when is enough? When do you quit? And just making sure that you're tapping into the true passion that's inside of you. So here's the bottom line. I know this woman, right? She makes phenomenal jewelry. And I remember seeing her, and oh my God, this was back in, I want to say 2012. And I just sat down and talked to her one day, and I said, what do you want to do? I mean, you cold-blooded at this. Do you want to, take it to the next level? This woman had thought about the name of her jewelry line. It was Greek, and it had something to do with royalty. And she was like, yeah, and it would be nice to see it on, people and all these different things. And I'm like, well, then go for it. And being that, not that you need this, I'm like, I went to college. I had my degree in business administration. I was a cosmetologist at the time and had been one for probably at that point about 17 years. I was like, fashion, design, all that stuff, I'm up for it. So I talked to her and I was like, hey, when do you want to do an expo? We just had this really big plan about her doing her breakout. She had been designing and doing other things for quite some time, and she was like, yeah, I've been wrestling with just going ahead and doing an expo. And I'm like, okay, come on, let's get this thing going. And from a business perspective, without giving you every detail and nugget and bolt, we talked about the size of it, which venue we would use, how many people would be there, how many pieces she would need for the exhibition, what her finances were like, if she had enough already produced, if she was going to have to invest in more pieces. And what ended up happening is I decided, I was like, I want to know what you do. I want to know how you do it. And my daughter, who's also very creative, and she was in high school at that time, we both took a couple classes from her. She taught us what to do. And I was like, you know what? I got a good idea. To take off some of the slack and to give people a variety, how about me and my daughter, we'll design some jewelry too? Because I mean, it just came to both of us like that. I said, why don't we design some jewelry and then you'll have a variety. And I was like, hey, what we can do is you can take a cut off of everything we sell, because she had already had an established clientele and everything. And, it's her, we wouldn't be able to sell the stuff. We don't know anybody like that. But that's not anything that we have been doing. And we were like, yes, let's do this. Now I want to give you all a forewarning. I'm really good at manifesting. And so when I want something, things and doors usually just open for me. I don't have to force them. I just happen to be at the right place at the right time with the right people. And I seize the opportunities and also put in the work to get those opportunities. So anyway, fast forwarding the story. everything just started coming. Bam. One of my clients, her husband actually worked for Edward Jones, and they had this convention that they did in my city every year, and they were doing something different because it was always snowing and cold. They wanted to do an indoor boutique, and they were like, oh wow. She was like, I'm going to take samples of your jewelry. I want to let the mothers see them, and I mean the wives of the wives of the spouses that work there, see if they like them, and you could be a vendor there. And I'm like, awesome. So I called the lady, I tell her, and I'm thinking she's excited right there with me. Then I got invited to do something later on that year in Columbia, and all of these things were coming. And as I was giving her these announcements, thinking that she would be super duper ecstatic with me, she ended up distancing herself from me. And I'm like, wow, that's kind of crazy. And I was like, she's literally walking away from an opportunity to pursue her dream. And I had gotten started, and I was in motion, and I was going, and I wasn't going to stop. And what ended up happening is I kept on designing more and more jewelry. My clients were buying them. Other people were buying them, and I was making money. And someone even offered to coach me for free. And lo and behold, I was having so much success with the jewelry that it actually was starting to pull my passion away from doing hair. And I decided to take the nasty plunge and leave my business doing hair so that I could design jewelry full time. Now, this other lady, she ended up just falling off the face of the earth. She didn't take it to the next level, but I kept going and going and going. And what would end up happening, to condense this part of the story, is I realized that I was capable of doing jewelry and I was capable of making money, but it was not my passion. It's not where my heart was at. And when things are kind of raggedy, old, and frustrating, life gets the better of me, there were times when making jewelry would relieve that stress for me. And there were other times when I would just sit there and stare at the beads and be like, I don't even know what to do with these. And I had to deal with the rude awakening after spending thousands of dollars on the tools and beads and packaging and all kinds of stuff. And I would end up leaving that business behind and spending a few months to get back inside of my own head and say, what were you put on this earth to do? Because I had left the business that I was doing behind. And I'll tell you about this in another story. I also ended up being in a completely different city. I ended up leaving St. Louis and going to Houston. And I realized that no matter what, whether it was with jewelry, whether it was with hair, when I was involved in different churches, organizations, if I saw people on the street, no matter what, the one thing that I've always done is I've always advised people. I've always given them a fresh perspective. I've always helped them be able to plot, plan, and strategize how to effectively reach a goal. And even on a bad day, I would still do it. So I talked about me. Let me just segue really quick. If you have a lot of gifts, you have a lot of talents, you can sing, dance, and write and act. You can't do all of them. You really got to let the world see you shine in one. I love one of Tyler Perry's videos where he talks about just watering that one seed. At first, all he had was his plays. Now he has TV shows and, his own production studio. He has one thing opened up the door for the many. So I'm not saying you got to let everything go, but I love the fact that he talks about that one seed. But here's the question. Out of all of the things that you can do, I always ask people, what's the one thing you'll do no matter what? Or like Dennis Kimbrough said it in one of his talks that I heard him say, what would you do for free? And what I realized is I could be having a piss poor day, but if you came to me and you were like, August, I would be like, huh? Hold up. I would literally switch gears and do anything in my power in order to help you out. And the thing about it is, in the process of helping you, I would be getting nuggets of wisdom deposited into my own mind, and I would end up helping me. So helping people is something that I've always done. And then I realized that finer category was to define it as being a coach. So ask yourself, how many gifts do I have, but what will I do even when things aren't working out, when it doesn't feel good? And that will give you a much stronger sense and a stronger direction in which way you should go and which gift you should actually tap into. So do you wrestle with this? You know, how are you doing with all these wonderful gifts that you have inside of you? I would love to hear some feedback. If you don't wrestle with this, but you got a lot of talents and maybe you've already made one door open into another, I love to hear about it in the comments. I like to know, where are my creatives? Because I mean, right now, if I wanted to, I could, go ahead and get an open mic style and start spitting, some type of flavor and giving you a poem. I can tell you about some ebooks that I've written. I'm doing what I'm doing now. I'm talking to you guys. I already said I design jewelry, and then the list just goes on and on. I have lots of gifts and talents, but this is my primary one. Who knows though? In a few more years, I might be like, you know what? I want to be like some of those other people who have pieces in Michaels. I might, in my free time, as I buy back more and more of my time, I might decide to use some of it to get back into jewelry design. It's just not what I'm doing right now. So back to the thing I said at the beginning. Also check yourself and realize that sometimes, even though you've invested a lot, you got to know when to say when. And if your heart is not with it, whether you're making money off of it or not, you have to really make a judgment based on your own mindset, what you're feeling and what you're thinking. And if your passion isn't there, look, you're not doing what you're doing as an entrepreneur to make a glorified position. You're not trying to create your own job. You're trying to create a destiny. You're not trying. You're creating a destiny. You're creating an empire. It doesn't make a difference how much money or time you've invested. You got to know when to say when. And I've seen many people stay in relationships, stay attached to businesses, and many other things, all because they've invested a lot of time and a lot of money. One of my favorite phrases that I always say is, instead of thinking about the time you lost, just start moving like there is no more time to lose. So until the next tip, this is your girl, August Crenshaw, personal development coach, coming here to give you tips and strategies to help you deal with the day-to-day distractions in your personal and professional life so that you can run a thriving and profitable business. Until the next one. Deuces.